sur notre quotidien.
This is Mathe, a political statement.
The views expressed in this podcast are not those of the producer or the production company. Today, we'll be talking with Colby on the views of censorship.
Hello everybody, this should be fun. It has been way too long since I've done a solo episode, which is funny because Russ and I were the founding members, and ever since then it's either been I'm not there or there's a bunch of other people. So this should be a lot of fun, very interesting. It's actually pure coincidence that this happened. Nick is dying because he's a godless libertarian, and Sean isn't feeling so well because he's a godless centrist. So me being the conservative, am obviously the only one blessed enough to be here today. So, how you doing, Russ?
I'm alright.
That's
so,
good.
More and more in this country, we're seeing people getting offended and saying that we can't say certain things.
Yeah, that's for sure.
If you're going to address somebody, you have to use a proper pronoun or asking them where they're from is a microaggression or not doing something right is cultural appropriation.
Mm-hmm.
So regarding a major group that is hell-bent on, some would say, censoring people, Antifa, do you think that they should be shut down because they are attempting to censor people, or do you believe shutting them down would be an act of censorship?
Well, you see, when you look at the First Amendment and the rights, specifically the freedom of speech part, when the Founding Fathers drafted that bill, they meant it to cover freedom of speech against the government. What it did not do is protect the right of tyranny and for advocation of tyranny. That being said, I don't necessarily think that if you have an opinion that we should have more government, you shouldn't be allowed to say that. Quite the opposite, in fact. I think that everybody should be allowed to express their opinion.
Okay.
However, I do believe that, and I used to think that flat out you should be allowed to say anything in any circumstance. Like, for instance, there was a point in time where I thought that you should be allowed to say, I want to kill the president without repercussions. That has since changed as I have gotten older and gotten more, not only life experience, but political experience.
I mean, people have been saying that since
yeah.
the,
45th president. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
People have been saying that ever since Trump's been in office.
Yeah.
But,
and even before then.
But my opinion has since changed. Now, here are the instances when I think of speech that I don't think are covered under the First Amendment.
You think that those people should be stopped regardless of peaceful protests?
Well, hold on. I'm getting to that. So The instances that the First Amendment doesn't cover, in my opinion, and in accordance to the law, are as follows. Obviously, shouting fire in a movie theater. But that's part of a bigger issue, which is speech that can or does directly contribute to violence against others or a dangerous situation.
Okay.
Perjury is another good example.
Right.
And, those are pretty much it. It's just speech that contributes to the dangers of others. And now, the thing with Antifa, though, is they take that too far. And they take any right-wing speech against, whether it be radical members of the LGBT community or against illegal immigrants, and they take that as being encouraging violence because you're saying offensive things about them, and somebody might hear that and be like, oh yeah, screw those people, I'm going to do violence against them. But just you can't be judged.
Let me rewind real quick. You said that radical members of the LGBT community are being attacked by Antifa?
No. I'm saying that the right is saying things about them that Antifa is interpreting as being violent speech when it really isn't. I'm sorry if I was confusing there.
Sorry.
But basically, Antifa's taking it to the point where they're saying that any speech against anyone that is protected under the banner of the left is violent speech. That's ridiculous. People can't be held accountable for what their speech might cause. If we were, that would mean anybody that produced a violent TV show or a violent video game could be arrested. It means that
I made a terrible short film back in 2016.
It would mean
a murder in it.
It would mean that any teacher that assigned Catcher in the Rye could be arrested because Catcher in the
Hamlet.
Rye. Yeah, anything remotely violent. Romeo and Juliet would have to be banned. You can't sit here and say that anything that might offend somebody to the point of violence or suicide should be banned. There's a big difference between I don't think illegal immigrants should be here and let's kill them. There's a huge difference. Yeah. And so I think that to say the former is an expressive violence is ridiculous. I mean, I can see how you could say deporting is an act of violence, but because you're physically removing
you're forcibly removing them.
But but it's in accordance with the law and with enforcing the law. The reality is that you can have laws all day, but they mean nothing if you don't have means to enforce it, and if you're not willing to enforce it. Because I can tell you all you want, like, hypothetically, you aren't allowed to dye your hair red. But I'm not going to do anything if you do dye your hair red. Like, then what the hell is the point in me saying you can't dye your hair red? So, to answer your question, sorry, I know I've been droning on a little bit.
Fine.
To answer your question, I believe that any person using intimidation or violent tactics to shut down the free speech of others should be arrested to the fullest, and should be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
All right.
Because if you use intimidation or violence and massive numbers to try to shut down opinions that you don't agree with, not only are you American, or not only are you un-American, you are the literal definition of a terrorist.
So would it be safe to say, and quoting you on this, that Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization?
Yes, Antifa is 100% a domestic terrorist organization.
Okay. Regarding domestic terrorist organizations, the FBI, I believe, I'll put my source down below, that they are recognizing Black Lives Matter as a domestic terrorist organization. What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel that those people are being misrepresented? Or
so first and foremost, I think that anybody that's listening that hasn't should go ahead and watch the show Dear White People. A lot
of people regard that show as...
I know. I was very skeptical at first because of the title, but if you watch it,
and it's based off a movie too.
It's based off a movie. It does do... I mean, it does appear to be a little biased, but it does do a good job of looking at things kind of from both sides.
Okay.
I still think that it's biased though, but it does a lot better. It's not overtly. It's not directly like fuck white people. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just I get it because I don't like the title, and I think that the show
the title is a hook.
It's a hook, and it's but the thing, it could be worse.
It could be much worse.
And I think that although I personally think that in the end, I mean, I enjoy the show. I think it's humorous and has a good storyline. I do think that the political leanings and the political message behind the show are wrong. That being said, I still enjoy the show. And so, to answer your question, I do think that in some instances, African Americans are treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. However, I also think that those instances are blown out of proportion and exaggerated. B, I think that most instances in which an officer uses force is justified, and I think that saying, well, they were black, therefore it was racist is a bullshit statement. And C is that the African American community is its own worst enemy.
Do you care to elaborate on that?
Of course. So, hip-hop culture, which is widely associated primarily with people of color, specifically African Americans, glorifies drugs and gang violence. I'm sorry, but it does. You can listen to any modern rap song or old rap song, and it glorifies drugs and gang violence. And what that does is that causes a lot of not only drug use and gang violence, but it also creates a lot of, I guess the best term would be posing, people that try to seem like they're into drugs and gang violence, which when you're a cop and you see that, and it's like a heated situation, life or death, you don't know the difference. And
I mean, you know people in law, in law enforcement, and so I wouldn't say you have experience, but you know people that have had experience.
I know people that have had that experience. I don't want to say who or how I know them, but I do know an officer who has been involved in 2 separate shootings, both resulting in fatalities. And I don't know if the first gentleman was African American, but the second one was. And it was a 17-year-old kid who had escaped from juvie. He was in juvie for beating up a kid stealing his iPod, and then I guess carving his initials into the kid.
Wow.
He was in juvie, somehow escaped juvie, broke into a house, burglarized it, got a shotgun, used the shotgun to steal a van, and was leading the police on a long chase. Now, the kid crashed the van into somebody's garage. The police pull up, and one of the cop car doors wouldn't open because I guess when the van went into the garage, it hit a car on the side of the street, so it kind of tilted weird, and so he couldn't open the door because it was pressing against the car. And I don't know if there was engine issues or what, but basically he was trapped in the car directly in the line of sight of that van that was going to back up, and he was about to back up, and this person that I know who's an officer got out of his car and immediately fired shots at the kid to make sure he wouldn't back into this other squad car.
And he was putting lives in danger.
Yeah, he was putting lives in danger. Well, anyway, the city that he was working in ended up getting sued by this individual's mother for a few million, and they were calling it a racist shooting. And they were saying it was race involved. Well, the funny thing is that this person that I know, who is the instigating officer, is not white. Not one bit. At all. He is a person of color.
Do you feel instigating is the right word?
What do you mean?
You said instigating officer, like he instigated the situation.
Yeah, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Instigating officers are really bad.
I don't want to give you any bad light.
Yeah, no. The
pursuing officer.
The officer who started the shooting. That's what I meant by instigating. Because he wasn't the only one that fired. Once he opened fire, other officers did. He was 100% justified in this shooting. When I say instigating, I mean that he was the first to fire. Sorry. Right. Thank you for calling me on that.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I don't want to make it seem because
I'm saying, along with the censorship thing, people are taking things out of context.
Exactly. If you say one word out of line, all of a sudden they blow it to the worst possible way.
We had a instance of that one of our first few recordings.
Mm-hmm.
And we clarified.
We clarified it afterwards, and thank goodness I caught it before anyone else did.
Yeah. And granted, what you said, it was I wouldn't say justified, but
out of context, it's definitely a super controversial and potentially hate speechy thing.
Other people have said the exact same thing and not gotten flagged for it.
Yeah.
So if you were to receive flag, it's unjustified, and yeah.
And I did go on to clarify.
Yeah.
What I meant. So yeah. So to answer your question, I know I've been dragging on.
It's good. It's fine.
Yes, Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization.
Okay.
In the sense that they're kind of like Antifa with the rioting and the showing.
They are violent. Yeah,
they are violent.
It's been proven.
Not all of them, but there's a reasonable number of them that go out and they riot.
It's the loud minority.
It's the loud minority, and that's a good expression because it's true. They go out and they use violence to try to achieve their goal, their peace, which there's no evidence of it, and they blow things out of proportion, and they mislead the public. I mean, it's one thing to be a freedom fighter, but when you're going out there and you're causing violence simply because an individual was black and not because of the actual context of the crime or the situation, it's absolutely absurd. And so I do think... I want to clarify that I don't think that everybody, or even a lot of the people within, quote-unquote, the Black Lives Matter movement are terrorists, but I think that the actual... How do I put this? I think that there are a lot of good, but I think in the end, the bad outweighs the good.
Because of the loud minority.
Yeah. If the quiet majority were to, speak the fuck up and do something about getting the violence out of their movement, given our... I would totally...
I'd like to give an example of that, of the quiet majority. Is given the area where we live, California.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently it is a very liberal state.
Of course.
I'm not sure of that. I don't fully follow
it. It is. There are only a handful of conservative counties, and most of them are rural counties, like Tuolumne County.
Yeah.
My understanding, and please, somebody, if you're listening and you know differently, please comment. My understanding is that the only urban county in California that leans to the right is Orange County.
Because when we went to not a protest. It was what would you call it, a rally?
Yeah.
It was a rally.
No, it was a protest. It was a protest and a rally.
Yeah,
it was a Second Amendment rally.
But when we went there weren't that many people.
I mean,
And
there were
I-
definitely more than I thought would show up.
So do you feel that I mean, there's a majority of people here that are actually conservative, and they're just not speaking
In
their
rural
voice.
areas, yes, and that has been historically so ever since the 1960s. Whenever they switched, whenever it kind of got to the point to where Republicans became the people, or the protectors of the rural, and Democrats became protectors of the urban. Because there used to be a time where Republicans were urban and Democrats were rural, and now it's kind of switched where Republicans are like the agrarian lifestyle, the small town, rural kind of life, and all their focus is on those people. Whereas nowadays, the Democratic Party kind of focuses more on the large metropolitan progressive areas. And so, yeah, Tuolumne County being an incredibly rural area, I would say that Calaveras, definitely Calaveras, and possibly Amador are all conservative counties. I say possibly Amador only because Amador does have a higher percentage of minorities, and minorities are statistically more left-leaning.
Okay. Regarding a certain bill that was passed in Canada, Bill C-116 or C-16, it is about the use of pronouns for
I'm rolling my eyes for those of you.
For transgendered people, or for people of a different sex or gender.
Of a different mental illness, yeah.
I'm not fully sure, because people are like, oh, they're the same, or oh, they're not the same, and I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
And
it's a complicated issue.
Yeah, very complicated. But it basically says that if you were to not use the person's pronouns, you could face a fine.
Mm-hmm. I actually remember that.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, that's
here are my exact thoughts. Somebody put it perfectly in a tweet. They said, and they tweeted this at Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, and it said, "My pronoun is Justin Trudeau is a faggot. Now, according to your own laws, if you do not refer to me as Justin Trudeau is a faggot, you can serve jail time."
Jail time? I thought it was only a fine.
No, my understanding is there's a little bit of jail time.
Oh. Well,
that's what their tweet said, at least.
Oh, okay.
But here's my issue with that. And I understand that it's Canada, so they don't have the Bill of Rights. But I think that freedom goes beyond the Bill of Rights. We do have naturally inherited rights that, whether or not the countries recognize them, we have. And it is our responsibility to take these rights and to make sure that we get to keep these rights. That's the thing about freedom, is that freedom is not free. You have to constantly fight for it, struggle for it, and if necessary, smite those who try to take it from you. So I'm going to tell this to all the Canadians that might be listening right now. Do not follow that law. Make your voice known, show up in droves, and raise hell. Because at this point, your freedom is being taken, and any law that is against your natural rights is an unjust law, and it is your duty as a human being to break it.
Clarify, raise hell.
I don't mean like rioting.
Okay.
Just don't riot. When I say raise hell, I mean highly inconvenience the politicians by being loud outside their offices and stuff like that. I don't mean go around burning. No. I mean, what's the term? Civil disobedience? Like,
can't you get arrested for that?
You can get arrested for a lot of things, but the founding fathers of America risked getting killed to fight what they believe for, so I think that people can arrest a little slap on the wrist jail time for what they believe for. I think that that's the problem with society, is nobody's willing to take the risks anymore. Nobody's willing to fight for freedom, whether it be America, Canada, Europe.
Is that something you do with this platform? Would you say that you try to...
What do you mean? Oh, something I do here?
Yeah, with this platform, would you...
My goal... Now, obviously, I understand that I am the conservative, and I do not speak for everybody. But when it comes to me, and my platform, and my hopes for this show, I hope that this show encourages people... First of all, gets the word out, because being a college student in a rural area with limited means of finances, I understand that there's not a lot I can do being in this area. However, that is ultimately why I wanted to start this with you, is because I want to get my opinion out. And if I inspire even just one person who is not in a rural area to go out and do something, I consider that a victory. And so my hope for this podcast, whether or not it gets big, is that it inspires at least someone to go out and fight for their rights and fight for their freedom. Because until people start caring enough to do something, nothing's ever going to change, and we're going to continue to go in this authoritarian direction that we have been going.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Regarding the name of Antifa, do you think it should be changed?
I think it should be changed to commie faggots. Anti-fascist action. Okay, I just want to be clear. The original anti-fascist action, which existed in France
Isn't it basically
and Germany.
NATO?
No, the original yeah, NATO. No, the original anti-fascist action was Jewish communists and left-leaning people in Nazi Germany and Italy. But what they would do is, because before they started rounding up the Jews, is the Nazis would go and they would rally through in large droves through Jewish neighborhoods and like harass and attack Jews. And the original Antifa would show up to these Jewish neighborhoods and literally fight literal Nazis.
Can I give an example? Have you ever seen Inglourious Bastards?
No.
There's a character named the Bear Jew. Big buff Jewish dude with a baseball bat. These people were basically bear Jews. Because he killed Nazis.
Yeah, I guess. They were... Antifa were the people that stood up, and they didn't fight against mean words. They fought against actual unjust actions, and they fought against an actual
literal
authoritarian...
Nazis.
Yeah.
Not the Nazis
like
nowadays.
literal Nazis, not the... Oh, he doesn't like illegal immigrants. Oh, he didn't refer to me as they, or my preferred pronoun. Oh, he's mean. He says mean things. No, they were fighting against literal Nazis that were coming to, like, kill people. And so, I'm going to tell you something that you guys may or may not know. Antifa uses the actual tactics that Mussolini and Hitler used to get to power.
Yeah, they use aggressive, hostile tactics to get their voice known.
Yeah, to get their voice out there and to silence those they disagreed with, even before they're in power. That's how Mussolini gained power. Is he started something called the gray shirts, brown shirts. I can't remember what it's called.
The Nazis wore the brown shirts.
Okay, then the Mussolini was the black shirts then, and what they would do is they would actually charge businesses to go out and beat up communist union members.
It's like protection money, but
Basically, they were basically the mafia, and they would go out and they became super large, used violence and intimidation to oppress those they didn't agree with, and then used that growth and power because they had grown, and by extension, their opponents either dwindled or were just afraid to do anything or speak out, and so that's how they gained power. And that's what the far left of Antifa is doing right now. So I think they need to change their name to Communazis. No, because they use the same tactics as Nazis, but they're like even more far left than the Nazis were, which a lot of people don't realize, but Nazis are actually authoritarian, slightly left of centrist, and Mussolini was authoritarian, slightly right of centrist. So the Hitlers were literally left-wing.
The
Hitlers, led by Adolf Nazi.
Yeah.
But yeah. You have any more questions?
No, I think we're good. I think we've got
cool.
Your
NATO
your
burrito.
NATO burrito.
NATO burrito. It's a NATO burrito.
Yeah.
NATO burrito. I just imagine like Angela Merkel and like the president of France, whose name I'm blanking on. It was the one that I didn't want. I wanted the super far right woman that was running for. Isn't that interesting that when the left-wing woman loses in America, it's because America's sexist, but when the right-wing woman in France wins, the left celebrates that and says it was a victory for everybody?
Well, different cultures, different,
No,
different
but
country
there's
entirely.
American leftists that were fighting hard for this woman to lose. And they were like, yeah, there were people that were like sending funds over to France because they didn't want her to win. Because it was a big election. It was basically the French equivalent of this last election. Very similar circumstances. They had the left, kind of socialist, kind of whatever you want to call them, and then they had the far, I don't want to say alt-right, because I hate that term. I hate that term, because it's evolved from what it should have been, and it got hijacked by the Nazis who coincidentally are actually anti-capitalist. You can look that up, Identity Evropa. But I want to say instead of alt-right, alt-light. That's the term I like, because it's diet alt-right, so to speak. It's alt-right minus the racism.
Diet Pepsi. Worse than regular Pepsi. Well, I think we're good here.
Yeah, I think we're good too.
Right.
So this has been fun. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Mathe, a political statement. Today's host was Colby. For all our social medias and our donation page, please see the description down below. Thank you.